Hello and welcome to this special episode of the FUT Weekly podcast. We are doing a review of 𝗵𝗀𝗏𝗏, realistically probably the last time we talk about 𝗵𝗀𝗏𝗏 as we head into 𝗵𝗀𝗏𝗏 content. I am going to be away next week, and when we come back we will be talking about how to start 𝗵𝗀𝗏𝗏 and all that kind of good stuff. So look out for those episodes, and I'll introduce our guests first of all. As you'd expect, we have my co-host Josh. Hello, Josh.
Yeah, good to be here. Final podcast for 𝗵𝗀𝗏𝗏. It's I know, it feels like it's gone quick, but there's been times in this year it really didn't feel like it was going quick. But I'm kind of, it gets this time of the year, I think so much focus has been on 26 for so long, you can kind of forget a little bit about 25. And I don't know, maybe the rose-tinted spectacles have already been put on for this game. So.
Yeah, we'll have to see, I guess, as we review 𝗵𝗀𝗏𝗏 in this episode. We also have with us Nepenthez. Hello, welcome back. Been a little while.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for having me on again. Nice to get the last show of the year.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah. What an honour.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into that. I think we were going to start with a bit of a kind of look at 𝗵𝗀𝗏𝗏 as a cycle as a whole, kind of go through what kind of happened, because I do actually think that it's been an interesting one from that perspective. It has kind of shifted and changed over time, maybe more so than other cycles. And there are a couple of kind of key moments across the cycle as well. So in terms of launch, I think my biggest memory, and feel free obviously to chime in after this, was actually that it felt like things accelerated quite quickly at the start. And I know that's something that EA are clearly keen to rectify going into 𝗵𝗀𝗏𝗏. And we actually had a relatively kind of more significant kind of campaign or promo at the start, Josh, when you compare to previous cycles, which kind of got the ball rolling.
Yeah, I mean, all of them blend into one, but I seem to remember us getting SBCs early doors for players that seemed really, really good. I'm thinking specifically of that flashback 𝘵𝘀𝘀𝘀. And, I think we went straight into Road to the Knockout, and it was like a promo in September. And we just kind of it just launched straight away into a pretty kind of full-on power curve. I don't think it ever moved that quickly before at the beginning. And it's tough to know exactly what drove it this year. There was obviously good content that was driving it from SBC perspective, but I don't think we ever got to the point where so many gold cards felt behind the power curve so quickly before. I didn't it was weird because I think it started off very quickly, and then I think the second promo was Total Rush, and I don't remember enjoying Total Rush a lot because obviously they wanted to push people into the Rush game mode. But I think by the time that promo came out, which was week 3 of the game, we'd already found out that whilst Rush was fun with friends, it wasn't very fun with randoms. So, I think it will be a theme throughout our kind of discussion of 25, but I do think the power curve was mishandled. And the beginning of the game, it just felt way too accelerated. And I, obviously looking forward to 26. Maybe that's the split in the FC points that we're getting. We're getting more, but they're coming in 2,000 FC point intervals. So, I kind of, God, it feels like an absolute lifetime ago. Now, I've said it's gone really quick, and now it feels like a lifetime ago trying to remember what my team looked like at the beginning of the game. But I even think the early evolutions were quite good. Especially the pre-order ones. I think everyone was running around with a Darwin Núñez for the first few weeks because you could give him the +2, and I think he got Power Shot Plus as well. And obviously we had the Power Shot meta right at the beginning of the cycle when you could do pop power shots or first-time power shots that would just flew into the back of the net.
Yeah, maybe we do a little pause just to talk about Rush, actually, because I feel like it didn't really change much during the cycle. We have talked about it before because we chatted about God, I've forgotten the name of the game. Obviously didn't have a lasting memory, Josh, but we talked about Rush in the context
rematch
of rematch. Yes, exactly.
Rematch.
But yes, it'd be interesting to hear, Nep, your thoughts first cycle, obviously, with Rush in. What do you think of it, and what would you change, I guess, would be a question as well.
Yes, it's an interesting one with Rush, because much like Evos, when they got introduced for FC24, I was extremely bullish on them. And they weren't great, but they were great. They were a game changer. I've got a lot of heat this year from some like entwined community members of mine for like bigging up Rush as like the greatest thing, and it just being so awful. And I had ideas. I was going to make a Rush channel to make content specifically around Rush, doing like challenges, trying to win 100 games in a row, or trying to like just using new player SBCs or practicing with Evos in there. And it was just awful. It was so obviously awful from the get-go. Like, after about 3 days, you knew straight away this game mode is not going to be it. Because if you don't play with friends, it is a horrible experience. And if you do play with friends, it is a brilliant experience for like 2 games. But then you realize that you are so much better than the people that you're playing against that you might as well go and play squad battles, amateur difficulty, and just rip 50 goals a game. It was that boring. So it doesn't have like any depth in terms of tactical play. Clubs is still a bit like, they still fall into the similar sort of meta in clubs as well. But there was no tactical play in Rush. There was nothing to play for. Even so, the rewards that were there, they're okay. But give us a leaderboard. Let us try and get top 200 with a team. Let's try and get top 100 and on like an elo system. Let's reward people for being good at the game by accolades, not by packs or players or Evos. Let's let people have that kind of that social element of, I am one of the best Rush players in the world, and here's my proof. So I hope for the new year we get shorter modes, shorter games, because even though they reduced it from 7 down to 5, because of the pause timers and like the celebrations and stuff, it still takes around 10 to 12 minutes for a game, and like getting into the game and stuff. And it's supposed to be called Rush. So I think like literally like either Thirst to 5 mode would be great, or 3 minutes or 4 minutes would be pretty cool. But also just give us a competitive mode and let us like join in with players on a similar rank, even if we don't have friends to play with. And I think it might open up Rush a lot more for next year.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, and one that I agree with, especially the competitive element. I think it also is frustrating because I think if it did have more of a competitive drive, or there was something to work towards kind of with friends, you see it with clubs, like the number of people I know who would still play clubs even though they're disengaged from the game. So you're essentially like, I think, missing a huge opportunity on EA's part to keep people in the ecosystem, in the Ultimate Team ecosystem, where they want them, when they're maybe not so engaged full time with the game. And then of course, something might interest them, and they'll come back and play for a bit. So I think it's not only like a shame from my personal perspective, because it's a mode that I really enjoy and I think we all do, but it's also, I think, a missed opportunity from EA's perspective. So I'm kind of surprised that I haven't seen much. I mean, it doesn't look like they're changing things much for 26, but I think it is a big opportunity for them to do something. So yeah, we'll have to see. Is there anything for you to add, Josh, or feel free to move on actually if you want?
I think correct. The flashback De Bruyne was FC24, not FC25, which no, I mean, none of us remembered. The flashback that I remembered, or like the premium that I remembered from the beginning of this cycle, was Varane. That's who I was thinking of. We got him early October, and he was like an elite centre back. Although, if you'd watched a certain content creator's 6 p.m. content video, you'd have seen him say he was vastly overpriced and you shouldn't do him.
I mean, at the time, he was pretty expensive, to be fair.
He was expensive at the time. But I think early game cycle for this, like just kind of outside of Rush, 𝘬𝘂, Player of the Month SBC, was one of the big ones, I think, that pushed the power curve along quickly early. But we also got so many squad foundations as well. Like, I'm thinking of like Fran Navarro, the NWSL one with like Ali Watt, I think her name was, the striker. I thought she was brilliant as well.
Sissoko.
Yeah. So if you go through like the early SBCs, like, were very, very, very good. On Rush, it's a good idea, just like executed in a way that didn't contemplate the people playing it, I think.
User behavior, basically.
Yeah, the fact that there was nothing in there to stop people rubber banding. There was nothing in there to kind of stop people like griefing against their own team. I think the problem is that it needs to be built out like clubs, really, within Ultimate Team. And I just don't think there's the capacity or desire to spend that much time building that much depth into what should just be a casual jump in, jump out game mode. But like, yeah, the idea that it was rush and it took longer than a normal game, especially with like rage quits and that kind of stuff, it didn't really work, I don't think, in the way that it was. But I will say, like, the flip side of that is that actually technically it worked incredibly well. For a brand new game mode, there was very few issues with it. There was obviously that thing where you could control the opposition keeper. That was hilarious. But I do think that the idea of picking your team, that whole like setup screen, and maybe you shouldn't be complimenting somebody on making something that works, but like if it didn't work, they'd be getting absolutely destroyed for it. And all of that stuff worked. The kind of visuals for it all worked. The commentator was interesting, and I there is definitely a base there. It's not like Moments where I don't think it can ever work really as a like mainstream game mode. I just think it needs the competitive mode is the big one. The like having something that is where you join in with your team with a bunch of players, even just that option of play with these players again, or rating system based on how somebody's played. Like, I just think there are so many aspects to it that could improve the experience of it. I don't think it's something we'll see as like a flash in the pan. I do think it'll be something that stays around. It just is going to need more fine tuning, and I don't know that that's going to come in the next game cycle.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I guess we've done Rush. Actually, the one thing I will say is that they did make changes to the mode during the cycle, which helped, even if they weren't the solution. So that was kind of good to see. And yeah, I think let's move back into talking about the cycle. Now, one thing from early on, I remember, Nep, and it links to this whole thing about the powers curve kind of being a bit weird, is the Ballon d'Or. And this was something that was written in about as being a kind of weird thing. I think Hugh mentioned it. How did you feel about that at the time when we suddenly got these more powerful players just added in essentially for a weekend?
Honestly thought it was a precursor to Team of the Year being loan cards, as to not break the power curve and then have them come back again later on, or have like, if you pack a Team of the Year, it's a Team of the Year rating for the first week, then it goes down like 10 ratings, and as the game cycle goes on, goes back up to being a Team of the Year. I thought it'd be something like that, and maybe it was something like that, and they were just like, oh no, that's a bad idea. But I didn't mind it. I actually think more of that sort of thing, like these winners teams that we've had, people have loved those, but obviously you can't give 95, 98, 99 rated cards way early in the game cycle. But when, we've just had the community shield, it's not in the, what's the first thing that gets played for 𝗵𝘱𝗰𝗀? What's like the first cup final? I don't know, maybe like the Super Cup or something. You could have like that Super Cup winners team for a weekend. That's it. Just alone, you get to experience some good players. And what they're enabled to do from that then is keep the rest of the power curve just completely dead, because they know those cards are going to disappear and everyone kind of gets to experience them. Maybe you can pack them, maybe you can't. But I thought it was an interesting concept that I quite liked. And for me personally as well, because Saliba was in there, I was like, nice, there's an Arsenal player. And I was just really, really like pumped to get a super high end Arsenal player like really early in the game cycle, even if it was only for a few days.
What did you make of it, Josh? I can see you on video making a face that doesn't look so impressed.
So I will say, I think it can work as a concept, but I don't think it can work where you can use those players in any game mode. I think like, with tournaments coming back, I definitely think there's something where you could do everyone gets a winners team, or you choose which team you want from a setup, and you get given their starting 18 players, 11 and 7 subs, and then you go into a game mode, and that's the only place you can use those cards is against another team that are all using those same cards. So you can still experience using those better players, but it doesn't make all of the grinding and all of the kind of work that you've put into your main team useless when it comes to champs or rivals, which I think was the problem that people had with it. It was kind of like, what was the point in all the work I'd put in if you're now just going to give people better squads to play with? So I think if you can contain it more, I think it's definitely an idea that can work. I do like the team of the year idea of like giving us almost like the kind of ones to watch cards for the whole cycle for team of the year cards. So there'll always be the best version of that card, so that it's just one higher than whatever their base version is at that point. Because if you're in team of the year and you haven't had a special card, maybe you shouldn't be in team of the year. So like, I definitely think that the concept is interesting, but realistically looking back on it now, that was the first time we knew there was a big problem with the game. I think that usership was not good. I don't think we realized it in the moment. I think we had Brammers on the podcast, and he said this is an engagement thing. It's not a testing something out. This is they need people playing the game.
It did come not long after Call of Duty, was it, as well? I think it was maybe even the following weekend.
Yeah, I think it was about a month into the cycle, maybe like 6 weeks into the cycle.
I mean, just quickly, that was something I found quite frustrating, is because it was they were usable across a champs weekend, which was quite early, and I'd carefully been considering how to build out my team for champs weekends, and then suddenly, actually, the striker that I'd evolved, which I was looking forward to using, had no use really, because I just got 𝘵𝘇𝗻𝘃, right? So there was this kind of weird thing where it's like, if I think that for a lot of hardcore players, it's like I'm working really hard to improve my team over this kind of crucial period, and then suddenly, boom, like everyone's just getting given a player that's much better than any of the players that I currently have, which I think, and also if you look at the engagement drop off over that period, that maybe was the start of, or one of the sort of steps towards that disengagement from a lot of hardcore players, which EA have kind of talked about since. So I think it was I think maybe the timing was poor. I kind of get what you're saying there, that it is an interesting concept and could work, but I'm not sure it was the right time to do that, or the right execution. And and going back to what you're saying, like I think it was a time when people were suddenly like there's something not quite right. And I think Brammers, understandably, being the game critic and consultant that he is, was like, this is a bit suspicious.
We're going to have the same problem again, though, with the Power Curve this year, aren't we? Because Team of the Year is still going to be Team of the Year. It's still going to come. And we're going to have from, September until January of EA trying their best to hammer the Power Curve down. And then Team of the Year is going to be here, and 95, 96, 97 rated cards are going to be in the game again. And so then we're back to square one. I don't know what their plans are for it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting with EA being more open about things, like whether they're willing to talk about how they're going to approach that, because it does feel like it kind of could undo some of their work during the cycle. But anyway, so we had the Ballon d'Or stuff happen, and then I think it's in that period following that we saw complaints kind of come up around gameplay more and more, because I guess people have been playing for a while at that bit, the novelty had worn off, and EA did see this churn out of users, and essentially it seems like they put a lot of that down to the gameplay. So maybe we talk about that, but let's start with maybe a positive on gameplay. So the best thing that got added in 𝗵𝘃_25 from a gameplay perspective, what was the thing that you thought was the best addition this cycle, Josh?
This is going to be really unpopular, but and I don't know that it was necessarily brilliant in 𝗵𝘃_25, but and it's also absolutely coloured by the fact we spoke to the gameplay team about this. But I think 𝗵𝘃_IQ has so much potential for what the game can be from a tactical perspective, and giving people multiple ways to play the game. I don't think this game was I think IQ has been kind of tarred with a gameplay being bad brush in this game, and I'm not sure that's completely fair. I do get people's frustrations with it. I have never been one that's enjoyed playing fullbacks at centre-back just because they're fast, though, and I like the fact that was made more difficult. Now, did it go too far? Potentially, and they have rode it back for 26, but I think IQ is a great foundation to start a brand new tactical engine from. Like, they have changed so much in the back end on the tactics to make IQ something that they can change and kind of I don't think people understand. I don't know, that feels a little condescending, but I think it can't be understated how difficult it is to get like 20 players, because you're only ever controlling one person on each team, to move in a coherent way on a football pitch and change that based on your inputs and based on inputs that are on every single player. And there is like 20 different options for every single player, and they've all got to work together. I don't think it can be understated like how many different variations there are and how much that will then change on the pitch. Is there going to be a meta? Sure. Do I think we found it this year? No. I do think the 4-2-1-3 was incredibly overpowered, and I think that there was elements of the way people set that up that made it better, but you didn't see 4-2-1-3 all that much in pro competitions. It wasn't that meta. It was just the best formation for people who weren't very good at the game to get better results. So, and that's like a community versus the actual game problem. If people experimented and used different roles and really tested what it was like using a different combination of roles down one side of the pitch and how they all work together, I think people would find something that suited their play style and the way that they played. I like that more.
I think there's a big problem with this, though, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here because I've talked about it so many times. We don't know what everything does, and EA refused to tell us. And so you can't expect people to spend hours and hours and hours testing something that they don't actually know what does. And you never see it in any other game. When you look at Call of Duty or League of Legends or Dota, you have to the micro anything, every piece of information you could possibly want. And so when somebody finds a meta, you can find a counter. But now in FC, when somebody finds a meta for like a green time 𝗪𝗏, I bet you there's something in tactics that will help you build a team that has a defensive foundation that will be really good at defending those naturally. But you don't get to know because it has to be trial and error. And when games are 20 minutes long and in the most like competitive settings that you can possibly have, nobody wants to spend their time trying something that might end up being useless. And then what do they have for their time spent? Nothing. And so I think it's really on EA, especially now that they're doing this whole with the stamina thing. They want, and the passing, like they want you to make a pass and it be able to be like replicated and such. If that's the way that they're going, let us have all the information. And instead of being scared about how people will break it, be open to the fact that you'll know exactly how it works and plays, and then you can fix it.
My question, like, I do agree with you. I think for a lot of things we need more information. But my counter would be, for a positional thing, how do you show all the data in the runs that are being made? Like, this is what I mean about, because if every position, which is what they said to us, which is that every position, the way that player changes depending on the roles that you've put around them, like, how would you allow people to see the information of, okay, if I play my left winger inside forward roaming versus attack, and my striker's on advanced forward complete, and my left back's on, like what information would you want at that point that's then useful in that minutiae of detail? I think it's difficult compared to like damage per second or like, you know.
Yes, it's certainly in the roles and how players play. But, you know, we have at the moment the green squares that kind of give you an indication of where players play. But for example, you have like one of the strikers. I think if you play them as complete forward, it opens up the green squares wide, left and right. And it's like, okay, so is it left or is it right? Like, he's not gonna, like, does he favor one channel? And how do then his stats influence how deep that goes? And then if you have an inside forward, and this is where they can do better with the tactics. Like if you do have an inside forward and then you've got a roaming cam, it can give you like a red zone where it shows they conflict here, like they're taking each other's space. And so now you can kind of change and adjust your positions. Instead of having one set of like those green squares, have your whole team as an overall give you a total like coverage map that you can then kind of work on and think, okay, if I do want a couple of more DMs, if I do want more density back there, I can set my DMs to holding and one to DLP. And like, we didn't even know what these things did. Like, again, it's like people find out over like really extensive time. The whole deep line playmaker for CDMs came out towards the back end of the game cycle as being quite overpowered because of how, like, where they position themselves, but only really compared to where the cams positioned for the 4-2-1-3. And that's why actually the kind of 4-5-1 and the 4-4-2 started coming back a little bit stronger, because those DLPs didn't have the space then in the midfield. And I like that tactical battle, but the fact that we can't just see that And the fact that we have to play as a community millions of games to learn that, I in a yearly cycle, I think is not good for people's enjoyment of the game.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I also think like there would be ways potentially for them to kind of give a bit more detail. I mean, what they show is not very detailed, essentially. I mean, the heat maps, and they aren't really, I don't think they are affected by other players. Yeah, no, they're not affected by the roles you're saying on other players, those heat maps. So being able to kind of add a load of lines for like maybe with varying emphasis in terms of color, depending on the more frequent ones, which change depending on the roles you set for other players. That could potentially be something that does help users. So yeah, I agree. Like more of that kind of transparency is always good. And I think we did get a lot of positive comments about the kind of concept of IQ and the fact that it does seem to be an overall positive for the game. But yeah, maybe the execution hasn't been quite what people had hoped, but at the same time, like as Josh said, it's such a big thing to implement, and it was always going to be a process. So yeah, do you ask the question then, like, why not just change it now to a yearly subscription fee and just keep the same base game?
Like, yeah, I think people would be happy with that. I think if that's the best way around it, like they would still get their sales every year of people resubscribing for the year. I just think they could build a really good game if they did it like that.
I mean, you look at the difference between the game before the patch we had in January versus after, and that was a much more significant change than potentially we've seen between game cycles. So, like the gameplay element of that is like, is a bit strange, isn't it? So yeah, no, it's a fair point. Let's do a break there, and we'll come back to talk a bit more about, I guess what I was just talking about in a way, the kind of progression through the cycle, maybe bring in some top SBCs and things like that right after this break. Hello, and in this break, a quick reminder that the pod is made possible by supporters. The pod didn't used to be weekly. Yes, Foot Weekly wasn't actually weekly for a time. And then someone suggested setting up the Patreon. And since then, the pod has been weekly. And in fact, it's been twice weekly because there is that supporter episode every single week. So if you'd like to catch that episode and keep the podcast going, it's just £3 a month to do so. And you get loads in return. And there are perks higher than that, including access to the Discord too. So if you're interested and would like to support the podcast, then head over and search Support for Weekly. Go to Patreon, and it's very easy to sign up. If you are a supporter keeping the podcast going, then a huge thank you for doing so. And if you do consider supporting, a huge thank you too. Right, let's jump back into the pod. Hello, welcome back after the break. Right, let's talk about how things progressed. I mean, there was a big jump in the power curve, I think, around kind of Winter Wildcards time, right? They introduced 2 playstyle pluses at that point, and it really kicked things on, and I think in a way that probably had an impact longer term, to be honest, on engagement around content. And then, of course, we had Team of the Year. Let's not get into the gameplay patch quite yet, but Team of the Year was, a pretty big bump as well. And, of course, we had the Zidane Evo, which is something that got mentioned by quite a few listeners. I think both 𝘃𝑗𝑗 and also someone else who I cannot find at the moment, but was definitely frustrated by it. Maybe it was 𝘏𝘃𝗏𝑚. It's just like something that I think a lot of people didn't really like who are hardcore players, because again, it was giving everyone this player who was very, very good, and it was a player that hung around in people's squads for a long time, which again actually does reduce engagement because people are not wanting to change a player in their squad, and they're not chasing something. But again, I think, Josh, another play to get people back into the game, because you had that plus Team of the Year plus the big gameplay patch as well.
Yeah, and I absolutely get people's frustration with it. We've done an off-topic podcast for the supporters this week, where we've gone all over the map, but we did briefly talk about like our approach on the podcast to talking about the game, and about trying to see things from EA's perspective. And if they have lost a vast swathe of people playing the game, and giving everybody a free Zidane gets people playing the game again, they're going to give people a free Zidane. If that, because we'll get frustrated, but we most likely won't stop playing the game, or at least the number of us that would stop don't equal the number of people that would come back. My frustration, I think, with the free Zidane is that they didn't give us the gameplay patch and then see if people came back. Because the patch itself would have been enough to get people playing the game again. They didn't need to give everybody a free Zidane card to get people playing. I think the other problem with Zidane was what came around it, which was the Bale SBC and 82x20s repeatable for Team of the Year. And those two things, it just meant anything you'd done up to that point, again, useless. Everybody could get multiple Team of the Years in. They could get these insane SBCs in because you had a repeatable 82x20 grind, so you had fodder to go and complete SBCs. And it just was like, it was like reset, new game. But new game from a start point that was so far ahead of where it should have ever been in January. And that's a Team of the Year issue, but it was also a game cycle issue. Winter Wildcards had 2 playstyle pluses. Why? There was no need for that. Again, that was an engagement driver because people had stopped playing the game. So then we get to Team of the Year and it's 3 playstyle pluses. It was just, and then you've got to have Evos that keep up with it. So we have a 500k Evo that gives 3 playstyle pluses, and they were people who used that Evo. They were in people's teams until Team of the Season. Like that, those kinds of things are bad for the game as a cycle and that feel of progression. And so, yeah, I don't mind them giving us free things. I'm not going to be upset about it. I just think the reasoning behind it, they didn't leave enough time of like, is the gameplay good enough to get people back playing? And so it became an unnecessary thing, but it was an unnecessary thing that was in everyone's team.
Yeah, it did feel like they slightly learned their lesson a bit when they introduced the Maradona, because there's a better structure to that, potentially. There's a bit more variety.
I think the game was too far gone by Maradona, wasn't it? I just want to touch actually a little bit again on Winter Wildcards, though, because attacking Avalanche Evo was ridiculous. And if I remember correctly, it might have actually been one of you two guys or you, Josh, that said to me, like, it was supposed to be 500k and it was only 250k. And so everybody got like an elite player in the moment that had like all these meta stats, and they had the Zidane and like everything else that was there. And it does just kind of like sets you in a position now where you're like, well, what next? And so EA had to keep pushing the boat. But yeah, I think the Maradona one, the reason why I know that, from at least my experience, and this is even on like RTGs, that Maradona was too far gone in the game already, is because I didn't complete him. I took the card, I put him into that first free Evo, and I didn't even complete that to get him to the paid part. And so I'm sitting there looking at him thinking, well, obviously, like, my team's so good that even an absolutely insane player doesn't get anywhere near it. And I think EA have got a real big, like, duty to kind of keep people engaged whilst building players and building their teams. And it's not easy for them. Like, I know it's not easy for them, but like, they've had a lot of years to get it right. And so the fact that they continually get it wrong every single year is a bit like surprising, really.
And do you not think this year was like maybe a bit more out of desperation in some respects?
Yeah,
maybe.
If the fall off was so bad and the money coming in was so bad that it was like they need results now to kind of have a good next quarter, even if that then hurts the quarter after it.
Yeah, but if they need results, just make a good game. Make a game that people actually want to play. Like, I know it's like sounds easy and it's not that easy, but if they introduce things into the game, if they like, instead of being scared of doing something that will lose them revenue, if they just like, maybe they have this year with the way, like, the rhetoric that they're using throughout like the pre-game sales, but if they just give people kind of what they want, surely people would play the game. And I'm really hopeful. I'm a little bit like anxious for it, but I'm really hopeful that Gauntlet and tournaments do really, really well. But the reason why I'm anxious is because they've, Jamie spoke on how it would only be one Gauntlet every 2 weeks and 2 tournaments per week. And I just don't, I think they need to be there permanently. When you think about the heyday of the game where people just played it over and over, it's because you had repeatable divisions and repeatable cups. And so it was at your leisure how and when you wanted to play the game. But if they're, again, giving like a really strict, this is when you get it and this is how often, it's again just going to fall into that pattern of like, oh, I've got to do this now, and then I've got to do that now, and then I've got to do that now, and then you're kind of waiting for the next thing. And I don't think that's how a game should be. Like, there's, what other game do you know where you go onto it and you think, oh, well, I've played the game, finished for the week, I have to wait until the content sort of like resets for me? I can't think of one. I'm sure there are some, and they're probably sports games, but I can't, like, imagine an F1 game where you're like, well, I've done a race for the week. They only race once a week, so I can't play it again until next week. You just never play the game.
Do you think bounties will help with that?
Yeah.
Because it gives a reason to grind rivals then at that point.
Yeah, so it's one of the things I've wanted more from an Evo perspective. But from a gameplay perspective as well, is just constantly reward me for playing. And, Jamie alluded to the fact it'll be maybe every 2 or 3 games for a bounty. That is going to be amazing for people that grind this game out, because especially if you're good at it and you get to a high level and you can just rinse through games, you might be able to actually build a nice little war chest of packs after a 5 or 6 hour grinding session, and then be like, right, let's see what we can get and how we can upgrade our team from this, opposed to playing your points through and then going like, right, well, what now? Let's change games.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting. And I mean, talking of kind of wanting to play the game, I think it's sort of now accepted wisdom that patch did achieve that we had around Team of the Year time. It made a big difference, and they've clearly taken that and run with it when looking at 𝗪𝐶26 gameplay, which is quite promising. But yeah, it's interesting to think, what do EA need to kind of consider, I guess, around gameplay. And I know this is not necessarily, this is more looking forward than looking back, but it's kind of a combination of the two. I guess what from that early period of gameplay do you think EA really did get wrong, Nep, that they need to kind of watch out for as they move forward in terms of gameplay?
I'll tell you something I found quite interesting with the gameplay change this year is, I don't know if it is exactly when the patch dropped, but when they introduced low driven shot as a playstyle, it obliterated all of my work and all of my SBCs and everything that I'd done prior to it, because it was so broken and so overpowered that if you didn't have it, you was at a disadvantage. And I think they have to be wary of that when changing the gameplay too much, that people are putting time, effort, and money into like SBCs, into Evos, into store packs, to then have your kind of players completely like depleted because something has been introduced into the game. And it's the same with like the Travellas, maybe not Travellas this year, but I can't remember what year it was. Might be last year. There was something that was super overpowered. Might have been finesse shots, and then they nerfed them into the ground. And it's like, damn, all of these players now just lost significant value because it's not as good anymore. They kind of did it with Power Shot this year, but I don't think Power Shot was too hot outside of pros because people can like time it and stuff, that it mattered too much. But yeah, I think from a gameplay perspective, getting the fundamentals right of being able to make a pass, to control the ball, to dribble the ball, and to like it's really difficult because Josh like calls me out on it so often, and I'm sitting there trying to pretend that I'm happy on stream that he's just proved me wrong, and I have to sit there and accept it. But in my mind's eye, I do things that I really think my hands are doing, and when it's not even close to what is actually happening on the screen, that's where I think EA have got this wrong, because I know what I want to do and I think I'm doing it, but the game isn't getting anywhere near to doing what I want to do. I would much rather they like focus on that area of gameplay of like the core fundamentals being a strong base than introducing something new, fancy, or a new playstyle plus, or anything of the sorts.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Like, just to provide a quick counter, I thought that actually adding low driven, well, we had the patch that got people engaged anyway, so like, it was less relevant. But had it been a game cycle where we weren't going to see a big patch, the gameplay wasn't going to change significantly, I felt that adding low driven was actually, or would have been, a really fun thing to have drop into the game, because it just adds an element of interest. But I felt like they were way too stingy in terms of the way they like gave. I mean, they got evolutions now. There's no excuse. They could have done loads, like plenty of evolutions. They can be kind of expensive because it's a powerful thing, but at least make it possible for people to add those that new playstyle to players they already have, even if it's the base version. Allow people to add that playstyle to the players that they already have, that they've been working on for so long. Because as you said, it did kind of invalidate quite a few attacking players all of a sudden, which was pretty bad. So yeah, although Finesse Plus was still quite strong, so I guess there was a bit of mitigation there. But yeah, I think you're right about kind of the fundamentals. Kind of like, I think there's also been this appreciation, which I think we might talk a bit more about, like connection and the way that EA focused on responsiveness, because I think there's been an appreciation over the course of last cycle that actually, as much as they can try to encourage people to play on it, and this sounds like, I think we talked about it before, blaming people for not having good gameplay, but ultimately, like, there is this thing that so many people play on Wi-Fi through connections that aren't optimized, all that kind of stuff. They need to create a game which feels good, even under those conditions, or even if people have like decent, they think they have decent connections. I could talk about it for a while because I've done a lot of research into it. There are lots of things which actually cause them to have bad connections, even though they think they have good connections. And EA have kind of gone and thought, okay, well, how do we make gameplay more suited to those types of players? And we need to do that now because, people's connections aren't really going to improve enough to kind of play under these conditions. Because actually, for me, I didn't actually find the gameplay over the first part of the cycle, which is a bit more, a bit less responsive, a bit more kind of realistic, that bad compared to what a lot of people are experiencing. But my connection is pretty good. But then, yeah, I did appreciate when it changed, and it felt like a fresh moment for the game, a kind of new start. And also everything, just got faster and more responsive, which I think if you're someone who's playing, even towards the sort of higher end, tends to be better because you can take advantage of that more against players who are going to play a bit, less decisively, I suppose. So, yeah, I thought it was quite interesting, the difference in gameplay and how they've run with it. And yeah, Josh, what are your thoughts on that before we move on from gameplay, I guess?
I think I just again, looking at it from an EA perspective, that thing about making the fundamentals better is so important to the playability of the game. And I think the problem we've had in the last few years is that fundamentals have now been put behind a power curve. And that's why you don't see 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘐 getting top 100 with a bronze team in FC25, because you can't do it. And there is something that is lost within the game when skill can't bridge that gap. And that's and that I think that's a worry from an EA perspective, because the worry is, well, if you don't need a better team, why would you buy a better team? Why would you get a better team? But people want higher rated cards. People want to show off their squads. People want to improve. People want to evo their favorite team. And if they can win with their favorite team, because they don't have to have the bleeding edge of the power curve, because their skill can get them wins that they're happy with, people will do that. Like, people will pay for evolutions. People will engage with the game in that way. And so my hope is that, and from the people that I've spoken to that have played the game, the game does feel playable with worse cards. Like, you can pass the ball, you can progress it up the pitch, you can use players that aren't very fast. Toni Kroos is usable. Like that, it's those things that I think will make the game feel better and feel more like the game that we had in the mid-teens, when kind of people talk about that as like the halcyon days of Ultimate Team, because everybody was usable, really. It was just about the progression felt more like, cool, I get to use this card, not I have to use this card because otherwise I'm at a disadvantage.
Yeah, I think it's it's very promising, and I think that's probably a good place, as we've talked about gameplay for a bit now, to leave it, and then we can come back and kind of pick out some top flop moments of FC25 after the break, and maybe actually just cover off the end of the cycle as well, because we haven't done that yet. So we'll do that right after this. Hello, welcome back after the break. Right, is there anything notable that any of you want to pick out from that kind of period, I guess, past sort of what we've talked about already? So, team of the season, and I guess shapeshifters into footies, and also the kind of very dead power curve period as we built towards team of the season. Was there anything kind of notable from that, Josh, you wanted to mention?
There's like a few bits and pieces within the cycle that might be worth kind of thinking back on, like mode mastery.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
When it was like, go and play in all these different game modes, collect all these tokens. It was, it was icon swaps by another name, essentially. It was done in a way that was like, I like those concepts. I think they're really good. I think the problem with a lot of things actually in the game is communicating it to the player base and explaining to people how these things work. But I thought mode mastery was like a fun idea. The fact we didn't see it again in the cycle, I don't know that we'll ever see it again. But, I thought it was worth just kind of like highlighting something people may have forgotten about. My main memory was like FUT Birthday being really drab, like really drab in a way that I don't think it had been before. I don't think 5-star was that special when we got to FUT Birthday. And the best parts about FUT Birthday were probably the SBCs. Like, I think we got Flashback Ronaldo was around FUT Birthday, like going into fantasy. I think he was the second week of FUT Birthday. So I think that didn't work. I think the best parts post Team of the Season, or post Team of the Year, I should say, the best bits were actually like live promos, which I feel like we got more of this year. And I think is just something that's like vastly underutilized utilized by EA, and I think it's the promos that are like the most engaging and the thing that kind of links the real world game to Ultimate Team. And I just think they need to do more of it. I think there's so many opportunities. And even now, again, with tournaments, like instead of having a showdown SBC, like we were talking about earlier, give people like the whole team from one of those two teams, go and play in a friendly mode where if you win, it's like you tally it up. And if your team wins in the real game, then you get a +1 on that player in the objective. And if they win the actual game, you get another +1. So you get a +2. But if it's, Manchester United versus Burnley, right? Well, Man United are going to lose. So even if I pick a Manchester United player, if enough people do that and win their games, then the Manchester United player gets the +1, and then when Burnley win the game, their player gets the +1. So everybody kind of wins. And I just think there needs to be more elements of the game that are related to like real world football. And I think they actually did a fairly decent job of it post Team of the Season.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Actually, yeah, the live stuff was definitely key positive. Anything from you, Nev, in terms of from the rest of the cycle that you thought was worth highlighting?
Just to touch on a few things that Josh was talking about there. First of all, like mode mastery, I think was brilliant for two reasons. Because number one, you got to win tokens and pick players, but number two, those tokens were actually good, and so it gave you a decision to make when you opened a pack. And like I got that 90 McAllister, and I needed one more token to get the top player. And I'm like sitting there like, God damn, I've now got a choice of either him or him. And it was fun. It was a good bit of engagement. But also like with the live cards, they are the best thing in the game by far. Like even if they're only like periodic or for a promo or, even for the like the showdown cards, like it gets people interested in the game, in the football, in the upgrades. They are brilliant. And doing the community side of things with the live cards is definitely possible, because I think it was FIFA 15. They did a community tournament where it's like the more goals we scored as a community, the more packs we got. I don't know if you guys remember that. And I think we had to like score 2 million goals or something like that. And it was done. And it was like, it was fun. People enjoyed it. And so adding like community driven projects for cards in general or live cards would be absolutely phenomenal. But for me, one of the things that I've not enjoyed about this year's game towards the back end is actually footies. Footies, when it first got introduced, it was never about packs, right? It was always about SBCs and objectives, and it was so good. I remember it wasn't called footies. What was there was a promo with like white cards.
Summer Heat.
Yeah, Summer Heat was an unbelievable promo around this time of the game cycle where people were still fully engaged. People are treating footies this year like a collection book. That's it. Nobody cares to play with the cards. Nobody wants the cards. Like, we got a 98 𝘵𝑒𝘐𝑰 and a 98 𝘬𝘐𝘐 Arsenal card, and I haven't completed them yet. And it's like, it speaks volumes about my attachment and engagement with the game, that some incredible Arsenal cards are here and I couldn't care less. Not really. Like I'm playing to try and get the FC26 packs, not to try and get the FC25 players. And I think if they want to keep people engaged for the full game cycle, they have to give things that are actually engaging for the full game cycle, not just this kind of copy and paste. Here's another bunch of the exact same objectives for you to do again, where you're just so tired of it and so bored of it. So yeah, I think my biggest takeaway from the back end of the year is that Team of the Season felt like it was about 4 weeks too long. Shapeshifters felt it was about the entire promo too long. It was terrible.
Yeah, I was going to say also 4 weeks too long.
Yeah, and
it was 4 weeks, by the way.
Yeah, and I also think that that footies hasn't felt like footies. It hasn't felt like a celebration of the game. It's felt like another, you want a really, really insane Ginola or Van Dijk or whatever? Buy our premium pass. Like, you want like the best players in the game? Go to the store and buy the packs. Like, I don't know. I just think they got it wrong. I think they've lost the edge of what it was, or at least maybe that's me. Maybe it's a me thing. Maybe everybody else is enjoying it, but I haven't engaged with it like I used to.
I do think it's been hurt by FC26 being announced, and essentially the promo for FC26 being FC25 was crap. Right. And so you're like, well, why would I go back and play it now, kind of thing. So I do think they kind of hurt themselves in that sense. I think people were burnt out on this game. I don't think the patch in January. I think it'd be unfair to say it papered over the cracks. Maybe it cardboarded over the cracks. Like it was enough. It held up for a while, but there wasn't enough after that to keep the game progressing and changing and feeling new. And I think that, coupled with a power curve that couldn't move anywhere, we do this every year, I think, but I hope that was like, let's just nail 26. Like 25's dead. That's going to be that's going to be our promo for 26. Is sorry about last year. We're going to nail it for the next year.
Well, actually, that's funny because 𝘃𝘅𝘀𝘀𝘁 comment he sent in was basically like, it felt like a cycle of EA testing a lot of stuff. We had the crazy upgrade SBCs during Team of the Year, the 𝘬𝘂𝘀𝘀 Evos, Zidane Evo, changing up exchange SBCs, introduction of playstyle Evos. There was the whole kind of build your own Immortals thing, possibly the most confusing thing that EA have introduced into the game. Choose your own adventure Evos, then season passes, of course, for the first time, being paid and that sort of thing. We saw them be quite experimental in terms of like evolution formats generally, and the paid for Evos and not paid for Evos. And then you had this whole thing about them testing essentially tournaments and friendlies and stuff for FC26. So I guess it did feel like a little bit like, I think we might have like effed it for this cycle. What can we do to kind of make sure we don't do that again next cycle? And so, your point is definitely valid about that probably being a bit of a turn-off for people playing FC25 as well. I think there's too much to add on the rest of the cycle, and we can probably move on to sort of our top highlights in terms of, I guess, content from FC25. Let's start from a sort of top level. So what were your kind of top campaigns or promos for FC26? Maybe we
26.
Sorry, FC25.
There already.
And it's good, actually. Maybe it means when we get into FC26, I'm going to say FC26 rather than FC25. What would you say was... let's do our number ones, and maybe if they're all the same, then we can move on to number twos. But what would you say your top promo was, Josh?
Competition winners. Like, I really liked getting squads for people that have done, again, the real life thing of like, your team or our team has achieved something. Here's a full team of them that aren't like, they were good when they came out. They were very difficult to pack, but they weren't like super insane. It was just a bunch of cards at and around the power curve, but it was just something fun. It's just more cards in the game for people to use. It was that widening the number of cards around, and like, so I think I enjoyed that. I enjoyed how many of them we got. I think they could do that, more with like each team that wins the league, every domestic cup. They could do that more often, and I think people would enjoy it. I think because it was new, that's why I liked it.
Yeah. And what would you go for? You already did mention that, obviously, Nat, but maybe that is your number one.
I thought the winners were good. No, my number one promo would probably be Thunderstruck. I thought it was brilliant again this year. Last year was very good as well, but I guess maybe from a selfish reason, it was the first time of the game cycle that we got like good Arsenal cards. We had like Little Kim's Thunderstruck SBC, and she was insane and got full upgrades. There was Henry's card, and there was a few other like Arsenal past and present players as well that were really good. And I don't know if it was the first live card, and Road to the Knockouts, I suppose, was maybe there as well. But I don't know. I really enjoyed that weekend of, what I really liked about Thunderstruck, and what I wish EA would do a bit different in future years, is not having content drop at 6 on the clock every day. Having some content, SBC coming out at 2 o'clock, and then something at 4 o'clock, and then something at midnight. Like, I like the fact that I could log on the game and be like, oh, this is here. That's real fun. Rather than be like, oh, I've still got 3 hours till 6 when the content comes. And I know that they've kind of like fallen into their ways, and like they must have a reason to do it 6 o'clock every day. Like maybe it just suits like worldwide kind of engagement with the game. But wouldn't it be nice one day for like an SBC to just be dropped at 4 o'clock out of nowhere? Like, it would just be fun. Like, I think it would again allow for like that engagement of, we have right now this like log on, log off thing that people have as a meme, like 6 o'clock log on, 6:01 log off. And I just think it would be better for the game to maybe spread the content throughout the day rather than at one time. But that's one of the things that I remember fondly this year about Thunderstruck outside of the players is actually just being excited to be on the game for the whole weekend. It was nice. It was interesting playing a couple of champs games and then be like, oh, new SBC's out. Getting that mental break from grinding the game and then going back to the menus for a little while. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know that I'd necessarily want them to suddenly drop something at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. in the evening. From all of our perspectives, I don't know how great that would be, but yeah, it would be cool from a user perspective. I actually thought personally that fantasy was pretty good. I mean, like, you know, as in live promo, and I guess we were talking about how much we like the live promos, but it was just solid. Like, I think the upgrades were decent enough for the hero ones were like less good from what I remember, but like, I don't know, there were just some decent players you could get through that. But it's interesting because I think I've struggled to be like, this one campaign promo was actually really good. Like, it doesn't feel like there has been the same, like, oh wow, they really kind of smashed it for this one, although there were elements of different campaigns which I thought like were good. And so yeah, in terms of and honestly, like, although it was a big power curve jump and kind of ruined the rest of the cycle, Team of the Year was really good. Like, I felt like it was like actually very engaging, but you kind of cheat and you make the players so much better than everything else, right? It makes it easy to be like, okay, well, yeah, you're getting engaged because you're going to have to be, you know.
Yeah, it's like a kid eating all of their Easter eggs on the Sunday. Like, it's great in the moment, but it feels crap for the next few days.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know. It's funny because we were going to do a top 3, but I kind of feel like there were a lot of very equal, like, quality kind of campaigns or promos throughout the cycle. So yeah, but I actually think that shout of which you both kind of have mentioned, of the tournament winners kind of campaign as being like number 1 because it's a fresh thing, and then maybe, you know, Thunderstruck and Fantasy as being kind of like other good live connected campaigns, I think is good. Yeah. I was just trying to think about team of the season. I just thought it wasn't. I don't think it was bad, but I don't think it was like, you know, up there as a team of the season, kind of, you know, compared to past team of the seasons. I don't know whether it really like. I felt like there was, you know, more in the tank that they could have done, as there often is. But like, you know, I think it'd be nice if they kind of built around that, had more of a kind of league focus kind of. And also, I guess there was a lot. I think one of the criticisms was a lot of players, like almost the amount of players that they were putting into packs, which it can be a good thing, obviously, but it felt like kind of overwhelming in terms of, you know, devaluing the players we did get because of that, I think. So yeah, let's move on to top 3 SBCs of the cycle. I guess they could just be ones that you thought were like amazing value, but I guess it's nice if they have some kind of personal attachment as well. Do you have a number 1 pick, Josh, for
that? My number 1 pick would be 𝘬𝘗𝘗𝘁 Winter Wildcards. I think he was just so versatile and kind of did a job that very few other players in the game did at that point in the cycle. So I think he'd probably be my number 1.
I think for me it was that Foundation Sissoko. He just seemed like so far ahead of other players at that time, even though he was only 20k. So in terms of value, I think he was really good. And then, and you had to put him through those evolutions, right? But yeah, I think he'd be number 1. What about you, Neb? Who do you go for?
I'm just kind of looking at like all of the old ones. I play the game differently to a lot of people thanks to the Road to Glories and the Crappers. So I don't always like hard focus on SBCs, and so I'm kind of just like looking at the early SBC players, trying to see if there was somebody that I got that I thought was good. But the first Arsenal SBC was that Rush Sterling, and he was utterly atrocious in game. He really did like remedy his real life, or like reflect his real life performances. But like when you asked the question, I was sitting there thinking, I hope it doesn't ask me first who, because I can't think of a single SBC player that I really enjoyed. Like, I'm sure there were some Arsenal ones, maybe Henry, because it was like the only way I was going to get first owner Henry on the Arsenal account. That's probably it.
Oh yeah, that's a good one actually. I think a lot of people listening will probably say that Henry. I mean, obviously, you know, the Hullet, but that's a bit boring. And, and Ronaldo as well, of course. The flashback was a big one. I got to say, in terms of the SBCs that I didn't like facing, it would probably be the flashback Suarez, and then obviously had that evolution as well. And then there was also that Henry was definitely really good as well.
I think there were 4 early in the game cycle that we should mention. So it was the Thuram brothers, So
they were both good.
I think there was like 2 of them were player of the months. I think there was an early player of the month for 85, and then 𝗵𝗀𝗀𝘀𝗁 got the road to the knockouts, I think. Like those 2 were just really difficult to face together. Then alongside them, you had that Varane flashback, was just in everybody's team up until like Christmas, and Morgan's end of an era with Finesse Shot Plus at like 90 rated. Just like I think that was kind of the height of Finesse Shot 𝗪𝗏 hitting, because she had both Finesse Shot Plus and base 𝗪𝗏, and it was just like from distance just was an absolute monster. I'm gonna like do a very personal shout out though for the moments 𝗬𝘅𝗀𝗀𝘀 from Dortmund. I loved him. He was one of my favorite cards I used this year. Like, he was just an absolute bagsman and really strong, really physical. He was a card that I didn't see anyone else use, but I think I used him for about 200 games. I absolutely loved him.
Yeah, I would actually give a personal shout out as well to the Alexis Sanchez flashback. I'm still kind of not fully sure what made him actually it was probably just Finesse Plus being stupidly good, but and that first touch plus as well have been quite nice for finding those angles. But yeah, he just was so good for me, and and he had Trickster, didn't he? And yeah, I was kind of had a period of like a week or 2 where he just kind of scored a stupid amount, and yeah, so he'd probably be up there. Let's move on to top evolutions. That's definitely a more personal thing. I'm not looking for the actual kind of Evo itself, like what player you enjoyed most as an Evo player over the course of the cycle. Mention a few, I guess. Yeah, let's go to you first, Josh, again.
You're asking me to choose between one of my children here. Like the Wang Gang are just so good. Like Wang Peng was such a good centre back from really, really early, because he had centre back and centre mid, and so he was able to go through both of those kind of evolutions. And especially for those low rated cards, it just meant that he just got very, very good. Like, he didn't have brilliant play styles, but he was just good on the ball, very quick, because they tend to limit pace for centre backs, but not for centre mids. So he was probably one of my favourites. I think I early on the Team of the Year blueprint, I did Wang Shuang, and she was ridiculous. Like, still one of the best dribblers that I've used in the game. So yeah, probably her or Wang Peng. Wang Gang unfortunately got like stuck as an 89 rated for too long, so kind of fell out of favour. But one of those 2 probably.
Nice. And then what about you, Nep?
Yeah, for me, it actually took me ages to get the player, because I was doing first owner Arsenal team, and would you believe it took me about 3 weeks to pack gold Gabriel Jesus, and I got him the day before the Evo that I wanted to put him expired, so I put him into the one that we got for getting the pre-order that gave Power Shot Plus and like a little +2. Then he went into another Evo that took him up to like an 86 rated, and he was just, for an 86 rated card, he had like 90 pace, 90 shooting, and like 88 dribbling, and he was just crazy. And it was before Power Shot Plus got nerfed, so he had Power Shot Plus as well, and he was a lot of fun to play with. A lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, there are 2 big contenders for me. No guesses, to be honest, if you've been listening to the pod all cycle. But there was this moment where I've been raving about this Jorginho Rutter Evo that I've been doing. And Josh and I were working on meta rank at the time. And we were like, okay, like we asked the developer, we're like, do you want to just check some of our Evos and see what their ranking is? And essentially this Rutter that I've been hyping up was the best striker by a distance in the game, theoretically.
It broke our system.
Yeah. And yeah, he just was ridiculous. Like he had like ridiculously high stats for the point of time that was, or like ridiculous high stats in exactly the right areas, even though his face card stats didn't look particularly amazing. And he had the finesse plus, and I think maybe had quick step at the time. Certainly had base quick step and just sort of just the right play styles. And then of course, obviously the Isaac Toure as well, which was a popular option. for people to Evo, and yeah, just being able to kind of perfect that over time. But even when he was like an 80, I was playing him as an 80 rated when, you know, the rest of my team were like 86s and 87s, and he was just so complete. And, you know, really kind of, I think it became increasingly a thing where people were looking at the size of players as an important factor, especially in defense. And he was definitely like at the start of that. So yeah, he was really good. I guess I could give go on.
Just on Evos, before we move on from Evos, I'd like to ask Nep about something that Jamie said with us a few weeks ago, which was that they're going to slow down the power curve and kind of try and bring everything down, but they're going to bring down Evos a little bit more than everything else. Do you think that's right? Do you feel like Evos maybe a little bit too overpowered?
That is music to my ears. Not because they were too overpowered, but because as soon as you put somebody into an Evo, you just couldn't Evo them again for weeks or months. And so now, if they're bringing it way down, I'm like, okay, I can actually give someone a +1. And then, you know, the next Evo that comes, another +1, and incrementally build the players. And I think something we learned this year, Josh, on the Crappers, was that playstyles first, stats second. And we learned it maybe a bit too late, but for next year, it's something that I'm really looking forward to taking into evolutions, whether it be on the Crappers or on the Arsenal cards or on any other Evo player that I want to Evo, is just waiting for an Evo that gives the playstyles I really want, because the stat boosts will just come. And so, again, with smaller stat boosts and not kind of eliminating players from future Evos, I'm really looking forwards to getting... I've been asking for this for the last 3 months in my videos and stuff, and I know they watch my videos, but they sometimes I kind of get a little nod to something maybe I've said in the video, and sometimes I don't. But I really wish they would just give single stat, small boosts Evos, 5 stamina, 3 composure, 1 sprint speed. Let me level out these players that I want to play with. And I hope that the reduction of the power curve and the fact that if they're going to do repeatable Evos next year, they can't be huge boosts. I really hope that they are like micro boosts that I can apply to who I want to. So I'm really, really looking forward to Evos next year. The only thing I would absolutely love, and it was kind of like talked a little bit about earlier on with the low driven, I would love to be able to take off playstyles and playstyle pluses as well as put them on.
Yeah, I mean, the dream would be to have like that they unlock and then you can turn them on and off, essentially. Like you can, you know, you have like I mean, people have seen it in other games.
Skill tree.
Skill tree.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, that is very ambitious. Let's then move on to our kind of top of the flops. Like, what was the kind of lowest moments of the cycle? I mean, yeah, I think that we've talked about maybe a fair few of them already, so feel free to just kind of mention in passing some that we've already spoken about.
My personal lowest moment
or
of the cycle,
personal low moments also
was getting 8 wins in champs with an extremely good team.
Wow.
I was in such head loss, and I like, you know, like when people tell you you've hit Unk status, I think I'm at like granddad status, man. I've got such heavy imposter syndrome when I don't get a result that I think is acceptable by the community standards. That I had to go into hiding after that one. 8 wins with an insane team is embarrassing.
Yeah, and actually, sorry, I laugh at that, but like, obviously, there are people out there who'd be getting 8 wins and be very pleased with it, and that's totally fine. But they're not playing the game as much as you, I don't think, or maybe it's not a professional pursuit. But like, yeah, I mean, these things do happen. Actually, I mean, yeah. In saying that, I feel like, yeah, it was a weird year from results perspective for me, and I think that is because the game was shifting and changing quite a lot. That like quality of teams you'd face would change quite a bit because of the power curve shifting, and then also the patch and things like that making things feel a bit different all the time. So yeah, it was a weird one in terms of results, I think, and also the champ structure being so like condensed, I think does just lead to more random performance because they can't matchmake you with. Like the matchmakers all over the place, basically. So you never know who you're going to face. Anyway, yeah, that's a good personal low light. I don't know whether you've got any personal ones, Josh, but feel free to broaden it out as well.
Shapeshifters.
Yeah.
Full stop. From an Evo perspective, there are 2 things that they've done with Evos that I feel are particular low lights. One of them was my own fault, but I'm going to blame EA for it. The other one is like I think just a bad addition. So there was, I think it was the team of the season centre back Evo where you had to play champs games, and I just left it a little bit late, and it expired at 6 on the Friday, but they moved champs back to start later on the Friday, and so I just didn't have time to play the champs games to get that done. That was the beginning of the end for me with evolutions in 25, because I was like, well, I've not got this, so now I've not completed every evolution, so I'm just not going to complete any more. I'd still completed some, but it was like I'd lost that completionist element. But the training ground evolution nonsense is so badly implemented. You can only do it on the web app or companion app. Why? And you can put somebody in there, but you have to claim them when they've reached a level. Again, why? And so if you don't claim that first level, it doesn't start the second level. And you then, you can put somebody in and pay for an evolution.
It doesn't notify you
says
either,
it will take 2 weeks.
It could notify you being
so bad.
Oh, by
it's
the way,
so
this
bad.
player's ready, but it doesn't do that either. Timed evolutions. Just, I feel like the execution has been so poor. Like, the concept could have worked, but the execution has been so bad. That's a really good low light, actually. I was going to add, a personal low light for me was not doing Team of the Year blueprint, actually. I just was so indecisive about it that I basically let it expire. As someone who is a bit indecisive, Evos are not that much fun from that perspective. But actually, from a sort of EA strategic low light, or it's not necessarily an EA strategy error, it's like an unfortunate coincidence in terms of how things happened this cycle. EA made a big play to make champs more competitive this cycle at the start. I don't know if it's a long time ago, but they were really pushing it as it's going to be more competitive, it's going to be more rewarding, and it was more rewarding at the start, but it happened to coincide with possibly the most widely derided gameplay we've had, and so it was never going to be a good, because I personally think that champs can be more competitive. I think it's fine. I think we need more competitive elements to the game, but it obviously, because it coincided with this poor gameplay, drop off in engagement, a game where with a combination of roles not providing enough movement, with player movement being awkward and clunky at times, and not feeling so responsive in terms of dribbling, passing not being great, it was the least competitive suitable gameplay we've had, I think. So I think that was really unfortunate and a bit of a low light, that actually the push in the right direction, I think, for champs, or at least some part of the game needed that, coincided with gameplay not being fun or good for competitive, and a big drop off, which means they may not really want to attempt that again, which is a shame. And I think that's probably the main one. I would say, I think that's probably enough. I'm sure there are other bits and bobs there, but those are the biggest ones. Also, obviously a star from previous cycle was 𝗪𝗏, and she then got a flashback this game, which was really great. But it was just never a good. I was expecting to be able to do an evolution at some point, but there was never a particularly good Evo for her, which is a big disappointment. And now she's leaving.
And now you never will again.
Now I never will again, because she's moving to Saudi. So, guide about that. Anything else?
We had that issue with I can't remember his name, but when we put him through the Team of the Year blueprint, he was the 76 rated Team of the Year card, and he just literally never fit into another Evo again. I don't even know if he has still now, because we gave up on the account, but he was just stuck forever as one of the worst cards that we'd spent 500,000 coins on. It was bad.
Well, also
Rapid and Chip Shot Plus. And the two playstyle pluses meant we could never do anything else to him after that.
To be fair, actually, also evolving a player who I was really pleased with Power Shot, and then they nerfed Power Shot, right? And I just never evoed him again, because it's completely wasted playstyle plus at that point. So that was potentially another low light. Well, anyway, we've probably covered enough. 𝗪𝗏25 forever.
Out of 10.
So out of 10. Yeah,
3.
With 3. Okay.
Yeah, 3. It was bad year. It was a bad year.
Yeah, it was a bad year. Yeah, I probably won't go. I don't. The thing is, I don't think I wasn't engaged with it necessarily. I think there was enough. I engaged with it enough that I wouldn't say that it was as bad as some years. So maybe a 5 to be.
Yeah, I'm gonna split the difference for. I think there was some interesting content stuff. I think the gameplay was bad. I think it's some of the worst gameplay we've had.
2 game cycles, wasn't it, in a way? So
but I think it had all of the worst elements of previous game cycles all in one. One tactic that everybody used, not a lot of team variation. I thought content was good, which is why I think it's a 4 and not much lower than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an
extended 𝗪𝗏26
it was a tough
beta,
drive,
wasn't
I
it?
think, this one. Yeah.
Nice. Well, on that, I mean, I guess that does tee us up to say there's certainly more promise being shown for FC26. So we look forward to chatting about that. And as I said, podcast on how to start FC26, and also our little off-topic episode, which is supporter exclusive, coming in the coming week or two, I guess. I am away next week, so probably won't be a podcast that week. And then we'll be back at it. So thank you very much, Nep, for joining us on this
thanks
one,
for having me on.
Yeah, always good. And thank you very much as well to Josh for joining me for this too.
Yeah, no, been good. Looking forward to chatting FC26 next time we pod.
Yeah, definitely. And as we always say, if you're listening to this on the various podcast platforms, do subscribe there. Do subscribe on YouTube too. Drop a comment, leave a like. We include all the comments. If you've got questions about FC26 you'd like us to cover ahead of launch, then drop those in the comments. You can also, of course, if you'd like an extra podcast every single week, pretty much, obviously, normal summer caveats apply, but they won't pretty soon, then do become a supporter. You can do that by searching Support for Weekly, or follow the link in the description. It's just £3 a month, and you, as I said, get double the podcast content. A huge thank you if you are supporting, keeping the podcast going. It is really, really appreciated. And a big thank you to those icon patrons: Dave B, Darren W, Hugh J, Rob W, Brent P, Ralph, Josh R, Brian, Michael B, Adam R, Bertasaka, Make B, Michael H, Andrew P, Arian B, Rob S, Michael K, Neil P, Jake S, Tom B, Alex M, Alan G, Lee A, Chris G, Mark M, Dom P, Rob P, Roger D, Dan W, Waterman, Also Ran, and 𝗪𝘂𝘶𝘃. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. Ultimate Team is a bit like life really. It has its many ups and downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.